Stay close. They're coming.
I know now that you're the one that I've been searching for. The special one. The chosen one. Miss Ashcroft.
314,000 people. That's not the population of a city. That's not a concert. That's the number of people who were simultaneously inside a survival horror game, a single-player, no multiplayer, $70 survival horror game, on the day it launched. Yesterday. Resident Evil Requiem didn't just launch well. It became the biggest debut in the history of the franchise on Steam. It cracked the all-time top 10 for concurrent players across every single-player game that has ever been on the platform. And it did it against a backdrop where everyone in the industry spent the last 4 years telling us that solo experiences were a dying market. So what actually happened? And what does it mean? Let's find out. Resident Evil Requiem's launch is the clearest data point, yet that premium, story-driven horror is not a niche product. It's a mainstream one. Over the next 9 minutes we're going to break down exactly where those numbers rank historically, how Capcom engineered this level of demand, what critics think of the game itself, and what all of this means for where survival horror goes from here. Let's start with pure context, because without it, that 314K number sounds impressive but abstract. According to SteamDB, within the first few hours of Resident Evil Requiem going live on February 27, it peaked at over 314,000 concurrent players. To understand what that means, look at the franchise's own Steam history. Resident Evil 4 Remake, one of the most beloved game revivals in the last decade, a game that scored a 93 on Metacritic, peaked at 168,000 concurrent players over its entire lifetime. RE Village, the one everyone lost their mind over during the COVID gaming boom, peaked at 107,000. RE4 Remake managed 74,000. Requiem didn't just beat those numbers. It doubled them. In a single afternoon. And when you zoom out to Steam as a whole, filtering for single-player-only games, no multiplayer boost, no battle royale spikes, Requiem sits in the all-time top 10. It passed Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Stardew Valley, and Oblivion Remastered in its opening hours. The last time a single-player game from a Japanese studio came anywhere close to this kind of PC launch? Black Myth, Wukong. That's the company Resident Evil Requiem is now keeping. But numbers like that don't appear from nowhere. They are built over years. Resident Evil was a franchise on life support in 2015. Resident Evil 6 had sold well but been publicly savaged by critics and fans for abandoning horror entirely. The series had drifted so far into action territory that the word survival in survival horror felt like a relic. Capcom made a decision that, at the time, felt like a massive gamble: go back to first person, go back to intimate horror, and start over with Resident Evil 7, Biohazard in 2017. It worked. RE7 scored an 86 on Metacritic and reinvigorated the fanbase. Then came the remake era, RE2 Remake in 2019, and 91. RE4 Remake in 2023, and 93. Each one added new players. Each one reminded the audience why this franchise exists. By the time Capcom announced Requiem in June 2025, the series had 183 million units sold globally. The wishlist count hit 2.5 million before launch. When Leon S. Kennedy was revealed as the second protagonist in December, the wishlists exploded again and the game briefly became Steam's third most wishlist title on the entire platform. Capcom didn't stumble into this launch. They engineered it, one critically acclaimed game at a time. Here's the thing that should genuinely surprise people about this launch. Resident Evil Requiem costs $70. Full price. No subscription. No battle pass. No free-to-play hook. It is a single-player, story-driven horror game with an ending, the kind of product that industry analysts have spent years arguing is getting squeezed out of the market by live service games, Game Pass economics, and players who won't pay full price for something they can finish in 15 hours. Except 314,000 people paid for it on Steam alone on day one. Twitch hit over 12,600 simultaneous streams of Requiem, making it the most streamed game launch of 2026 so far. What this tells us is that the problem was never that players wouldn't pay full price for a premium experience. The problem was the industry's assumption about what that experience needed to look like. When the game is genuinely good, when it actually delivers on what it promises, the audience shows up. Every time. Resident Evil Requiem is a direct rebuttal to years of boardroom logic that said single player was dying. Now let's talk about the actual game, because the numbers only matter if the product holds up. Resident Evil Requiem scored an 88 on Metacritic from over 100 PS5 reviews, and a 90 on OpenCritic, placing it in the 98th percentile of all games ever scored on that platform. To put that in franchise context, it is the highest-rated mainline, non-remake Resident Evil game since Resident Evil 4 in 2005. It beat RE7. It beat Village. The only games in the series with higher Metacritic scores are the remakes, and those are adaptations of games already universally considered classics. The consensus from critics is that Requiem pulls off something genuinely hard. It fuses Grace Ashcroft's claustrophobic, hide-and-run survival horror with Leon Kennedy's kinetic action sequences, and mostly makes both feel coherent inside the same game. Where critics disagree is in the second half. Several publications, including Eurogamer, which gave it a May 5th, noted the back half leans harder on nostalgia callbacks than the nerve-shredding horror of its opening hours. Some reviewers called that an earned celebration of the 30th anniversary. Others called it a slight loss of nerve. Both are fair reads. The interesting thing is that neither camp is giving it below a 7. So where does this leave the genre and the franchise? For Capcom, Requiem arriving in Resident Evil's 30th anniversary year with this kind of commercial and critical performance is essentially a mandate. The RE engine is proven. The audience is larger than it has ever been on PC. The dual-protagonist structure opened doors for where the story goes next. Critics have noted the ending deliberately sets up future threads without resolving everything. For the survival horror genre more broadly, Requiem's launch has a ripple effect. Other publishers watch Steam charts the same way you do. When a single-player horror game cracks the all-time top 10 in concurrent players, that is not a footnote, it is a signal. Expect the next few years to see more premium, no subscription, story-first horror titles greenlit precisely because of what happened on February 27th. There is also the Capcom movie pipeline to consider. A Resident Evil film directed by Zach Cregger, the director of Barbarian, is in production with an $80 million budget. Requiem's launch gives that project more oxygen and more mainstream awareness than any marketing campaign could have bought. The horror genre is not dying. It is consolidating around quality, and right now, Capcom is defining what quality looks like. 314,000 people walked into Raccoon City yesterday. They did it by choice. They paid $70 for the privilege. And based on the review scores and the Twitch numbers and the Steam ratings still climbing above 86%, they mostly don't regret it. What Resident Evil Requiem proved is simple: survival horror was never broken. It just needed someone to keep making it with conviction. Capcom did that. The audience answered. If you want to see more deep dives on franchise launches and what they actually mean for the industry, subscribe and hit the bell. And drop a comment below. Are you playing Requiem this weekend or waiting for a sale?